Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Abez Show with me, Abe. Today, I have a very, very special guest, one of my closest friends. I've known him over 20 years, and we've done some crazy stuff together. Please help me welcome Khaled. Khaled, how are you, buddy?
Not too bad. And first of all, you don't sound too excited when you're introducing me. And second of all, I was wondering whether or not you'd want to have me on the show, considering, that the fact that we've known each other for so long and having done those aforementioned crazy things. But it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So this is something for you and my audience, and I don't want anybody to edit this, is I suck at anything scripted. I suck. You can tell that I'm reading. So I'm very flowing kind of person. So I know we can have that conversation. So let me ask you, and you know what? You can say whatever you want. Keep in mind, this is a family show. So this is something that we may want to make sure that we, we don't want to be flagged by anybody or anything. So just let's keep it.
We'll keep it PG-13. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know you have a family with a kid and another one on the way. So we do not. We want your kids to see this one day. So anyway, in all fairness, let me re-ask you the question. So what do you do? And let's take it from there.
What do I do? A lot of things. Basically, I am the general manager of a playgrounds company. We supply outdoor, indoor playground equipment, recreational equipment. I also do the radio part-time. I do the morning show on the radio station here. Shout out to all the Bliss 104.3 fans. And it's pretty much juggling between the two now, currently. Previously, I've done so many things. I mean, I've been DJing at clubs here in Jordan since 10th grade. So
hence the background.
Yes, and I'd like to assure everyone who's watching is that no good records were hurt in the making of this wall.
Good stuff. So yeah, so tell me about, you don't meet a lot of people that have like a super, in my opinion, very interesting job, like building playgrounds. That's not something very common, tell me more about what people's reaction when you tell them that. I'm sure people really and tell us more about the business and tell us more about what goes behind making these cool stuff.
Well, that's the thing, and you really hit the nail on the head with that one. A lot of people think, oh, this is awesome, it's so cool, you must have a blast all the time. And realistically, I mean, on the ground, the situation's not always like that, because so you've got your manufacturing, you've got your installation, your after sales support. This is, of course, other than marketing and going out there and meeting with clients. So it is really a range of things. But for example, when it comes to the installation, it's a lot of construction, a lot of people working at the same time. Things sometimes don't go as planned. Sometimes, a client tells you, hey, I want playground equipment here. And you realize there's a septic tank under the area where you're supposed to build playgrounds. So it's not always as fun as people think. It's really a lot of sweat and tears sometimes involved with this business. But the cool thing, I guess, for me, I could change things. So it's a job that allows me, sometimes I'm out there in client meetings, sometimes I'm in the office sending out emails, banging out proposals. But if I get bored of all of that, I get to go on site and actually do the installation myself.
Nice.
And that is something that I really like doing, and I do recommend. Obviously, it depends on the size of the company, but I thoroughly enjoy doing it because when I'm on the ground, a lot of times when I'm doing the installation myself, should anything in the future come up, I know exactly how long each process would take. You know what I mean? So I feel like being on the ground does give me a lot of insight on when it comes to the bigger stuff.
So your office is not monkey bars and slides, is that?
No, sadly, it is not. It is just a shell of a playground.
No, that'd be cool if you had to walk into the office and do the jump on the monkey bars, and then from there slide into your office smoothly and nicely. You know what I mean?
I think you are overestimating my fitness level, my friend. It's it's been a while since you've seen me. It's been a whole pandemic, so my fitness level just shut down.
Well, good to know. Good to know. I'm curious to know about things that you've done. You know, if you've introduced, you know, maybe a new type of equipment or type of things, and it, you know, people did not react as well as you thought they'd react to, or like if you've introduced a service. You know, I'm sure, you know, kids will be kids, and you know, sometimes kids can get creative on playing a certain certain equipment, right? And tell us some of these things that you've experienced where you're like, oh, I didn't, you're like, oops, what happened there moments.
Oh, there are so many of those stories. We've had projects here in Jordan where, let's say, it's a tender for 100 schools, 100 public schools across the kingdom. And I remember one of the projects, we finished the installation, we installed everything, submitted it to the client. We're like, hey, look, we finished installing. Here's the invoice for this site. And then I think 2 days later, they called me up. They were pretty upset. They're like, why did you send us the invoice if you didn't do the work? I'm like, what do you mean we didn't do the work? Like, buddy, here are the photos. Like, look, this is all done. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I'm on site and there's nothing here. So apparently someone came over and just took the equipment.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
mind you, these things were installed using concrete foundations. So fun times, fun times.
Definitely not something you'd expect ever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And one time I remember we were doing a project up in Jarash, and you know the school was closed obviously because we were doing work. Also, it was summer, but like all the kids in the neighborhood were super excited about the playground equipment. They're like, oh, when do we get to play? When do we get to play? And there was this wall, Abe, I kid you not, 4 meters. Kids started going over the wall, dangling themselves slowly, and then letting go. What must have been a distance of at least 3 meters, and just falling down. My heart just dropped, and I'm like, we're gonna have a huge problem. All of a sudden, kids get up, start running towards the playground equipment.
That sounds like a Game of Thrones, the Great Wall.
So they are extremely resilient, and yeah, that day was not the best of days because you know the concrete was still wet and everything, and the kids started climbing all over everything, and nothing was as level as it should be. So
I'm curious to find out if, you know, with all these stories, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of good stories that you guys came up with about changing a community and all of that. But obviously there's always the bad side where, you know, like you said, you know, some person decided to reallocate everything to their homes. You know what I mean? So
now that you mentioned community, I think the projects that we have completed that I feel lasted the longest and, you know, were taken care of tended to be in the smaller areas and the smaller villages around the country, which, you know, was surprising to me because, you know, you'd think that in the city where there are many options for kids, it wouldn't necessarily experience the same wear and tear that it would in an area that only has this one playground. But it is that sense of community where people really do have that sense of ownership over their public services that you don't necessarily have in the big cities. I feel like in the big cities, if a kid can break off a part and go home with it, they will.
It's interesting, and it's. I think also keep in mind, even in smaller things, smaller cities, what happens is that whole community feel, and I think, you know, making these kids, you know, happy, and you know, you hear all the laughter and whatever. Honestly, is something really good. Not only for the community, I'm sure it makes you feel good as well. All right, so let's drift into your radio experience, and I know I've been on a couple of guests on your radio show, and I know last time we had an issue.
It took you this long to repay the favor, like.
Yes, definitely, and hopefully this one will have more reach. Oh snap.
Oh, all right. I see where this is going. Okay.
No, but no, I know you guys, come on in the morning, you and Zayn, and you speak about everything that's happening in Jordan and stuff like that. I really want to know about your most awkward interview, or the most interviews, again, that talk about certain things that were, I'm not going to say taboo, but I'm going to say more like not as widely accepted by the community. Like, can you tell me more about that? Because that, I know you're going to have a bunch of stories for us that is.
Yeah, no, you're right. Doing a radio
keep
show.
It PG.
Keep it PG, yeah. But doing a radio show in an Arab country, obviously there are certain topics that, if you want your career to continue, you should stay away from them. We haven't had a lot of bad experiences in that. Like, usually we prep our guests really well. We're like, look, we're going to be talking about these issues. Don't, swear. Don't do this. Don't do that. Put your phone on silent while you're in the race. So we very much prep our guests as much as we can. And we also jump in. I mean, we steer the interview. If we see it going off course, we always try to bring it back in.
Honestly, I feel it for a lot of these, announcers, and even TV when they have these live, and sometimes even if it's not about swearing, sometimes it's about a topic that they know nothing about, and then they start talking about their personal feelings towards it, and that's when, I think interviews, get into that really mucky waters, and you can tell a lot of times in interviews they go to commercial and they come back, the guest is not there. So probably somebody like a big bouncer came in and just carried them and they said, "You out," you know what I'm saying, and threw them out of there. So I can say that I've never been in that situation, thank God, and I've done tons of it. I don't think I've ever sworn in a live session or a live interview, but I know a lot of my guests have, said some irregular stuff. And if you work in the tech startup space, all these words, a part of the DNA of building the ecosystem.
I think swearing is actually quite natural, and a lot of times it's the seasoning of the language, and it is part of the industry as a whole, as you say. Maybe it's not the part that is showcased and displayed for the world to see, but no, it is there for sure. And for me, it took a while to disconnect the way I talk every day from the way I talk on air. And in the beginning, when I started doing the radio, people are like, we always feel like there's something that you want to say but you're not saying it. I was like, yeah, you have one guess as to what word that starts with the letter F it is. At any point in time, 25% of my brain capacity is preoccupied with just not swearing on air.
I agree with you, because a lot of times, I think when I first started doing these interviews, like my brain was working overtime just to make sure that I don't swear. And I was like really trying to filter. And like even sometimes when people ask me to do interviews in Arabic, which is something I'm not very comfortable in doing, especially in technology, certain words that are not in Arabic, so you have to mention them in English, and it's fine. But especially a part of growing up, and believe me, from a guy who owned a call center, hiring fresh grads who's essentially most of their lives talk to two audience. They talk to their parents or their friends, you know what I mean? And they've never had this professional working relationship with either colleagues or their clients, right? And that's why we used to, and still do to this day, offer a full 1 month paid training on communication skills, because this is something that is, in my opinion, very well needed. And this is something that I've been pushing everybody to do, because there's a clear disconnect, especially, people that graduate from university. I'm amazed that a lot of universities still don't offer basic communication skills or basic interview skills and basic stuff like that. Yeah. And that's something that is very important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember, for example, in university, for me at least, shout out to U of T, it was, we did take a technical writing course. Now, I was doing civil engineering, and we did take a technical writing course. But again, I don't think it would have prepared me for, things like interviews, talking to clients and things like that. Then again, it's not what gets you. I think in business to succeed, it's all about relationships and your relationships with people.
Yeah.
So an emphasis on that definitely would have been very much appreciated. The other thing you mentioned, Arabic and English, us being bilingual. I always thought that I was pretty good at Arabic and pretty good at English until I had to speak only one or the other.
Oh,
And I catch myself doing it because, for example, when I'm traveling in the US, I'd be talking to someone and I'd be like, bus 1, 2, 3, 4. They're like, what does a bus have to do with it? And it's these little things you start noticing, that these little words from Arabic you rely on. And by the way, vice versa for English as well.
I agree. No, like a lot of times, even a lot of my guests, even the non-Arab guests, will say words like "yalla," will say, you know what I mean? And because I think it's now more of a cultural aspect of the language than more of as a language, right? So I want to ask something because I'm sure a lot of people will ask me this. So I know you juggle two jobs essentially between your playgrounds thing and you're a family man with 2 kids. How has your life changed in the last couple of years juggling all these 3 things? I'm sure there's a lot of emergency proposals that you have to send for the kids, and then the radio might send you on an assignment to interview somebody or something, and then obviously the kids require one thing or another. So how do you feel about that, and how do you actually juggle?
I'll be honest, there are times where it does get pretty crazy. But luckily, I mean, my son Ahmed Habib Abu is a year and a half now, so he pretty much his entire existence has been in a pandemic. So in a sense, that was lucky for me because things were not as busy as they'd normally be. We were on lockdown. I was spending a lot more time from home. Even the radio, we're broadcasting from home rather than going to the studio because we're just trying to do the responsible thing. So I feel in that sense, it has helped juggling between all 3 because, I could be doing a podcast or a meeting with a client over Zoom, and then 2 seconds later, I could be feeding him and making sure that he's not killing himself. So in that regard, it's been easier, but they're a black hole of time, kids.
Yeah.
Like they will take as much time as you are willing to give them, and sometimes even not willing to give them. So I found that the only way I can, like, if I'm working on a serious proposal and I need to get work done, the only way I can do it is to not be in his presence. I cannot for the life of me. Also, I can't multitask to save my life. I'm the kind of guy where if they invented blinders for humans, this guy would be first in line. Definitely my solution was, look, if I have a serious job proposal, I will step away, do it for a couple of hours. Me and my wife will take shifts when it comes to these things, because really that's the only way.
Okay, no, it sounds. I think and a partnership is something that you and the wife,
Yeah.
it becomes more of a team sport.
I mean, if I, between doing the radio show and taking care of the kid and, business, if I had a big tender to prepare, like the radio show is pretty easy. You just have those 3 hours every morning. I do 7 to 10. And in the evening, I work for 1 hour just to plan and prepare the show. So the radio show is pretty easy breezy. But, sometimes for the playground business, we have this big tender that's 100 pages and needs to be submitted. Of course, consultants don't remember until the very last minute.
Of course it is.
So you have to end up pulling an all-nighter, working through the weekend, things like that to get things done. So if anything, sleep is the one that I compromise on at least.
It sounds good. I think you only get more efficient as you get along, right? So people don't tell you that as you grow up, you get a lot more efficient and you get to know what is really worth doing and what's not. So that's something that I can tell people. So, all right. So I promised you I'm going to ask you a curveball question. And the curveball question is something that I think you're going to enjoy. If you wanted to mimic a superhero, who would that be? Or if you wanted to have one superpower, what would that be?
Okay. Well, between A and B, I'd rather do A because there are a lot of superheroes out there that have multiple powers. So you're kind of selling yourself short if you just take B. With regards, I mean, obviously, Superman's powers, well, I mean, it's Superman, like maximum everything. But Superman himself is a Boy Scout, in my opinion. I wouldn't want to be Superman. I'd want to have his powers, and I'd probably do a lot more with his powers if I had them. Um, yeah, he'd be a good one. As vanilla as that is, he'd be a good one. I would say Deadpool, but I wouldn't want to have the same skin condition as Deadpool. I mean, that healing factor is amazing, but the skin condition, is it worth it? Is it worth it living forever looking like that? Hmm.
I don't think so. But I have to tell you, I'm kind of disappointed at your choice, knowing you, because I usually don't comment on people's choice, but I know you really well. And I think you'd be more of a like something else other than a Superman. Superman is the easy question, easy answer, in all fairness.
Collects all the superpowers. Again, I hate Superman. Superman's a Boy Scout and he's boring as a character as far as I'm concerned. But superpower wise, I mean, you've got a pretty good set on there. Like, it'll be, I can't think of someone where, like, okay, well, that's cooler. I'd rather be doing that. I mean, who are we going to choose? Even Spider-Man. As much as I love Spider-Man, web slinging and everything and all of this stuff, he can't fly.
A lot of my guests actually, you're the first person to pick Superman, I think, out of all of my guests. But people chose the superpower of flying. People chose the superpower of like.
They chose B. They chose option B. It's on them.
Yeah, a lot of people did time travel, by the way. So that's something that they wanted to either. But some people picked time travel to the future and not, not backwards, which was kind of interesting. A couple of my guests also chose villains, which was also super awesome, in my opinion. And I think that just shows you how real, things are in the world. Especially, I think after COVID, people really started thinking out of the box in questions like this. And nobody like, stared at their monitor for like a minute or two. Everybody had like an answer within 10, 15 seconds, which shows you that people are thinking about this question, and it's not as a curveball as much as I want it to be. But it's interesting you say that. And by the way, I don't think I'm ever going to reveal my superpower, but well, Khaled, it was lovely talking to you. I think we had a very nice and interesting conversation. Would you like to say anything to the audience before we close the show?
So my movie is going to be hitting theaters next week. Please do watch my film. I have no clue what it is called, but go watch it.
Nice. It's something to do with Superman, right?
Maybe. We'll never know. But real talk, thanks for having me on the show. It's been a fun chat. Also, I really like the background behind you.
Yeah, it is real, by the way. I keep telling people it's real. And talking about real talk, we do have a hashtag for this show. It's called Real Talk No Nonsense. Please check it out. I think we're ending on a high right now. So thank you very much for listening. Until next time. Bye.
Yeah.